You are watching me, Mick, here on my YouTube channel, Movies TV Mad. You can also follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram, Movies TV Mad X. So, the final movie in the DC Extended Universe, the DCEU, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, has finally been released, everyone. And with that release, purists, pundits, everyone else and their grandmothers, godfathers, everybody else has decided to write an epitaph on the DC Extended Universe's gravestone with not one good take amongst them. As some of you, most of you, all of you, not all of you may know, I've been talking about the DC Extended Universe on this very platform since July of 2018. So I know my stuff. One of my early videos, I saw the first Aquaman early back in 2018. So I've been talking about this subject matter for a very, very long time. Seeing so many different takes about why the DCEU ended, and so many know-it-alls thinking they know the answer. Well, they don't. Oh, they know the answer, but they don't want to talk about it. Let's talk about it between us. Why the DCEU has ended after a decade. I mean, normally, something would be celebrated for lasting for a decade, wouldn't it? Because normally you'd say, wow, DCEU is ending after 10 years, but they've told a story. It's over. That's not the case of the DCEU, is it now? Because the DCEU is a complex story looking back at it. And I'm not here to do a previously on the DCEU, this happened, that happened. We know what happened with the DCEU. We don't need to boringly recap it like certain people are doing documentaries and stuff. Now, I would love to do a documentary. I'd love to get a camera and present that for you. And, you know, give you images of what happened and things like that. A proper documentary. With interviews from the players, from the actors, from Snyder, from all the other directors that were involved, from people that ran WB and DC at the time, including people like Johns. I'd like to do that, but I'm not going to sit here and do a shitty bullshit documentary without the players. There's no point. But we're going to talk about what happened calmly and slowly in the next 28 minutes. So let's do that. Why didn't the DCEU work in the end? Why is it a long, long line of failed movies and bad decisions and embarrassing movies? Now, to be clear, you know I'm a huge fan of Zack Snyder and what he did. Man of Steel to me is like, what can I say, Picasso, you know, Mozart's Symphony. Same with Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut, which I stood alongside you, all Snyderverse fans and Zack, and fought for that movie. And we went through so many different twists and turns, didn't we? I'll never forget all of those memories, the good memories and the bad memories in fighting for the Snyder Cut. That has never happened before. I mean, people fought for the Donner Cut, but that wasn't really completely the Donner Cut, and it was a different situation, wasn't it? But fighting for the Snyder Cut and the Snyder Cut thing is one of the most unique moments in Hollywood history. And that's all part of the DCEU story. You see, pundits and purists decided to treat Zack Snyder like a pantomime villain. But why? Why did they hate Snyder? Why did they hate his films? Because he dares to be different and unconventional. And anything different must be crushed. How many times did you hear from DC fans, the ones we call real DC fans, right, sarcastically, saying, we want to be like the MCU, why can't we be like the MCU? My analogy, which I've been repeating myself on X a lot, is that everyone decided, not everyone, but a lot of people decided that comic book movies should have blonde hair and blue eyes. Fascism rose up within purists, pundits, geeks, and nerds. But we had a great alternative to the MCU with the Snyderverse. And when you look at Kevin Feige, even he kind of liked what was going on. Even though it was kind of obviously doing, and not because it was doing him a favour because people were divided over it. He was very worried about Batman versus Superman. He said that. Now we know there's a lot of conspiracy theories that basically Captain America Civil War is a rip-off of BVS. And for it to be a rip-off of BVS, they must have known what was going on, and they must have known, they must have had a spy in the camp. So, at the end of the day, that's a theory. I believe it personally, but I can only allege such an incident. But Feige came out publicly and said that Batman versus Superman worried him, and he felt it was about time the MCU did something as serious as what Snyder was looking to do. That statement is ironic because while the rest of the world were like crucifying Zack for being unconventional and being different, Kevin Feige looked at Snyder and thought, Jesus Christ, actually, maybe we should go this way as well. And look at what Feige did with both of the, Captain America sequels. Because Captain America and the Winter Soldier is a darker movie than the first one. And it's got a really deep, dark story to it. Yeah, the colour palette and all of that, and there's a few gags, but it's a dark tale. And Captain America Civil War is an even darker tale. Yes, the introduction of Holland Spider-Man has some bright colours and some gags, but that film is very dark. And it's very similar to BVS because Feige was worried. Feige could see artistically that Snyder was creating an alternative to what he was doing, and that worried him. Why was he worried they were making the box office? He was worried eventually when Snyder got to Justice League 2, or maybe even 3, people would start to get it and embrace it, and people would kind of think, well, actually, the MCU just looks a bit childish, bright, it's fun, but it doesn't have any depth to it. And this is what worried Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige is a bright guy. I don't know what went wrong with Phase 4 and the beginnings of Phase 5, but at the beginning, Feige was making some very good, bold decisions, right? Because the MCU didn't start off as this kind of soulless kind of machine that was just making money. They were actually making good movies at one point. There's a lot of good movies in the MCU, but I don't know what went wrong. Anyway, so, even Kevin Feige admitting that Snyder had talent, and he was worried about what this director Zack Snyder was doing. So if it was good enough for Kevin Feige, why wasn't it good enough for purists, pundits, and critics? Because it dared to be different. As I said, they decided that CBMs should have blonde hair and blue eyes. And if you were one of those people, that says something about you, that you believe all movies should do the same thing. Now, I don't believe that. I believe we do need an alternative, that we do need to do things differently. But here's the problem. WB started listening to the pundits and the purists, because guess what? There was a divided fandom. The box office wasn't rolling in. They weren't making a profit. As Snyder rightly said, as he was promoting in Rebel Moon a few weeks ago, if you wanted a mainstream DC universe, why did you get me in the first place? Now, this is something that I've been saying for many, many years now and months. And like some of my fellow Snyder fans have been saying, Mick, you can't say that about Zack. I wasn't saying anything bad. Snyder actually echoing what I said. If you wanted to make real money and you wanted kind of to embrace the mainstream audience, why are you bringing in Snyder anyway? I'm not being derogatory to Zack, but Zack's always been clear that he's not interested in the mainstream audience. He's interested in self-indulging what he wants to see in movies, and he wants to make the movies that his fandom wants him to make, the movies he already makes. We've already spoken about this in terms of Rebel Moon. If you're coming in to Rebel Moon expecting Snyder to bend the knee to you and give you gags and bright colours, then you're tripping. You're smoking the biggest 6-foot mushroom that there's ever been. But if you like the works of Zack Snyder, then you're going to love Rebel Moon, because it's probably one of the best of his takes ever. But there's people who really think that Snyder should bend the knee and change to their ideology of what a film should be. And isn't it interesting? Just imagine this, a young Martin Scorsese starts making films and people say to him in the 70s, "Oi, why aren't you making films like that other director, right?" Oh, no, this is a great comparison, right? Because Quentin Tarantino, like Snyder, is another uncompromising director, an unconventional director who is lauded for actually being unconventional and who celebrates cinema as well. Imagine when we saw Pulp Fiction if we said, "Oh my God, Quint, why aren't you making films like Martin Scorsese?" Do you get it? Why weren't Bob De Niro and Al Pacino in Pulp Fiction? What's your fucking problem, Quint? Do you understand how stupid it is, right? How stupid that is. But that's what people have been saying to Zack Snyder in terms of the DCEU and most of his work. Why can't you be like Kevin Feige? Why can't you be like the Russos? Even the Russos love Zack Snyder. Yes. Because Zack Snyder, look, no one, like no other directors, when they see Snyder work, think this is what I should be doing. No one. Snyder is an unconventional director. He makes Zack Snyder movies. There's this great story from the set of Man of Steel, and I don't know if you know about it, but it always makes me laugh. And actually Russell Crowe echoed this in the marketing of Man of Steel. But so they're on the Krypton set, and Zack's holding a handheld camera. As we all know, the fans of Zack will know, he loves shooting films on handheld. So Crowe looks at him and he's approaching him. He's on his green screen, motion capture suit or whatever they were wearing at that moment. He goes, "Zack, you're using a handheld camera on a movie of this size." And Snyder goes, Yeah. "Wow, this is going to be different," Crowe replied. And then Crowe echoed this in an interview. He goes, "You don't normally make a film of this size with, using a handheld camera." But he respected Snyder for that. He wasn't being derogative to Snyder. And when I see Russell's interviews, normally Russell's quite somber and miserable when he's doing the marketing run. But during Man of Steel, and you can go back to all the interviews, he was making jokes. He was on Graham Norton with Henry and Amy, and they had a good time. Crowe really loved working with Snyder. There's nobody who doesn't like working with Snyder. And isn't it interesting? Is it Ed Skeirin, who plays the villain in Rebel Moon, saying how surprised he was that there was no Netflix people on the set of Rebel Moon telling them what to do, and Snyder was given the freedom, and Soph saying, Zack deserves this, he deserves this freedom after everything he's been through. In other words, what Warner Brothers did to him. If you get Zack Snyder to make art for you, then you've got to let Zack Snyder be Zack Snyder. That's exactly what Ed and Soph were saying. And I absolutely agree with that. You either allow him to be who he is or get somebody else, right? And that's the thing. He's been talking about making a Bond film. Of course, he hasn't been asked to make a Bond film. Imagine a Bond film by Zack Snyder. I would just love to see this happen for the outrage. But I would love anything from Zack Snyder. If I'm ever going to be in a movie, let Zack Snyder direct me. I want his slow motion. I love him. I love his films. But let's get back to the DCEU and how it died before it began. Because we had a director with a vision, an unconventional director. And as I say, like in Man of Steel, when they say people hate what they don't understand, that's why people hate Zack Snyder and what he did with Man of Steel, and especially BVS, because it was very unconventional and it was very different but it was the alternative to the MCU I believe DC needed. Listen, we're going to find out in the next couple of years whether a bright and comic book accurate take at Superman and these other characters works. Well, that's what people think James Gunn's going to give. I'm not quite sure that's the plan from James Gunn, because James Gunn can also be a very, very dark storyteller, but we'll see. And what does the future hold for James Gunn, by the way, as we talk about the death of an ending of the DCEU? Rumours of a Paramount WB merger, which could just be for this person trying to sell her shares, her stake in Paramount. You know, she's just putting rumours out there to get more money. That's the rumour as well. But make no mistake, in the next couple of years, Zaslav will either sell WB piece by piece, or as a company in its entirety, or merge it. And the new WB, when he gets rid of it, will not have, he'll sell the Discovery stake. Zaslav won't be involved. It's Zaslav who put Gunn as co-CEO of DC Studios. So the fact of the matter is, in the next couple of years, the person who's put Gunn in the position he's in won't be around anymore. So basically, unless Gunn makes a successful Superman legacy, he doesn't have a future either. So that will be somebody else replaced. And Gunn's got all these big plans, right? Which will go down the toilet if Superman Legacy doesn't make $1 billion or even $2 billion. I believe Zaslav wants $1 billion or $2 billion, for Superman Legacy. That's the valuation on Superman and Batman. But at least $1 billion. At least $1 billion. That will be realistic. 800, I think, look, Gunn's at the most is made around just over 800 million box office. Oh, no. This year he made around 900 million with Guardians 3. That film did really, really well. Just about 900 million. But he's never made $1 billion movie. And today it's all about money at the end of the day. But that's why the DCEU didn't work, because purists got nervous about Snyder. The pundits, the critics, didn't like what he was doing, and the studio listened, as the box office wasn't the size they wanted it to be. And this is where all the problems lay. So, did removing Zack Snyder solve the problems? No, it made the problems worse. Now, maybe getting rid of Snyder could have brought them more box office if they started again, instead of deciding to recycle what Zack had already done. This sticks in my craw. It's like a knife in my throat to hear people celebrating the end of the DCEU or writing their epitaphs on the franchise's gravestone. This is why I'm doing this video, because I have to get my bit in. I have to. Because it's been annoying me that people think they know why the DCEU didn't work. It could have worked. It could have been something unconventional and special. It began to be something unconventional and special, but you interfered with directors. You did Snyder dirty. You did David Ayer dirty. You did Andres Muschietti dirty, because that Flash was a monstrosity. And it wasn't the film I saw in the test screening. And isn't it somewhat ironic that Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, its director James Wan, was also done dirty? Because that film released wasn't the film I saw in the test screening. I told you, the test screening was a bold, kind of Wrath of Khan type of movie. And when I went to see the theatrical cut the other day, not shocked, because I've been around for so many years during the DCEU, but wow, they killed that darker vibe. It's still there somewhat, but not a lot. And what a shame. People have complained about bad VFX. I'm not sure about bad VFX. That's something I would never label at James Wan, but his vision for the movie has been bastardized. Just like they tried to bastardize BVS, but it didn't work in the end. How they did bastardize Justice League, David Ayer's Suicide Squad movie. That's why the DCEU never worked, because it was tampered with. You look at Feige in the MCU, he had the vision, he brought in the creatives, they did what he wanted. And he allowed them a little bit of freedom, but not very much. And it worked for a short time until he brought in less talented people and tried to control, the situation even more, and it got worse. Basically, the MCU is failing now for the same reasons that the DCEU failed. Because we had a very, very, clever, uncompromising creative in Zack Snyder with his own vision. Was it ever going to be $1 billion per movie? Was it going to be the darling of the cinematic public? No. So why did you bring him in? Because really, the DCEU was created not by Zack Snyder, but by David Goyer. While having writer's block when he was supposed to be writing The Dark Knight Rises, he came up with this spanning story, Superman story, about a first contact story. Because David always believed the only way you could make Superman relatable was through a first contact story. I don't really know why he thought that, but it was an excellent idea, and I love him for Man of Steel. But what happened after Man of Steel is Nolan syncopied his production company, and Goyer vanished, and they was not really involved with BVS. Even though Goyer has a writer's credit for the screenplay and story for BVS, but he had nothing to do with that film, but he's got a credit because he wrote a treatment for a Man of Steel sequel, which BVS is supposed to be. And Nolan was a producer on the film, but again, they blamed Nolan and Goyer because Man of Steel made just under 700 million and not the billion or more that they wanted. Snyder was already in production of BVS, so they tried to tamper with what he was doing. It was too late to remove Snyder, in other words. So Christopher Nolan and Goyer, really, who were the brains behind the Man of Steel story at the very least. Of course, the visual storytelling in Man of Steel was all Zack Snyder. These three people worked very well together. And I wonder if removing Nolan and Goyer was the wisest of moves. It wasn't. So they were taking the pieces, the bricks that the DCEU started with. So in the end, removing Goyer, Nolan, and in the end Snyder didn't work out. Because Goyer and Nolan and Snyder had great plans. They wanted to do a prequel movie starring Russell Crowe and Michael Shannon as Zod and Jor-El, a Krypton prequel movie. That's what the Krypton show was originally supposed to do. And then they dumbed it down to something else. Now, to be fair to the Krypton show, it wasn't that bad, but a prequel starring Crowe and Shannon, fuck me, that's what I wanted to see. That's what I still want to see, but I never will. There were big plans. We already had Man of Steel. We had BVS. We could have had David Ayer's version of Suicide Squad, a Man of Steel sequel, a Wonder Woman movie that wasn't tampered with within its third act. And it goes on and on. This is why the DCEU didn't work. You had Nolan. You had Goyer, who orchestrated the Dark Knight trilogy. Batman Begins didn't make that much money, but it didn't have a huge budget. So it still made a profit. And it's a great movie. Some of us even think Batman Begins is a better movie than The Dark Knight. Not a lot of us, but some of us. If you just let Goyer and Nolan and Snyder cook, it would have been beautiful. As I say, would it have made $1 billion a movie? No. But it didn't have to. Sorry if my picture just froze there. It's a crappy HD camera. And if I move quickly, it freezes. I know it's annoying. We will upgrade in the new year at some point, I promise. Because since I've begun, we had a crappy picture and crappy sound, and we've improved slightly. Not brilliant, not the best tech, and we will improve slowly as we get more and more attention, and this channel does more and more better, fingers crossed, because I have big plans for this channel. So, yeah, if you just kept Nolan, Goyer, and Snyder and allowed them to do their thing, no, it wouldn't have been $1 billion, it wouldn't have been the MCU, but I still think it would have been respectable. Who knows if BVS came out with the actual, full 30 minutes they cut out. Instead of doing, an ultimate edition, it came out as a 3-hour movie. Maybe that film would have just crossed to $1 billion. I think it would have. Because at very least it would have made sense to the mainstream audience. It still was an unconventional... Look, BVS is an unconventional movie, so is the Snyder Cut. But it doesn't make them bad movies. That's my point. That's the point that I'm making. Man of Steel was Man of Steel. They wanted Superman to break Zod's neck. That's what cost that movie $1 billion. And I've discussed this before. I don't have a big problem with the next snapping moment. I think they could have done more with it afterwards and had Superman saying, I know what it's like to kill them. I'd never want to do that again. I've told you this before. That's what I would have done when they're standing by Jonathan's gravestone, Clark and Martha. I think that would have told the audience, because sometimes audiences need spoon feeding about these things. I think that's what Nolan and Goya and Snyder were trying to do there, but it wasn't obvious to everyone. So the next snapping moment was controversial because we've never seen Superman be that blatantly violent and kill someone. And I know he's threatening to kill Zod in Superman 2. And, it's up for debate whether, he does kill the 3 Kryptonians in Superman 2. And I don't really want to go there either right now. Because I don't want to argue with my fellow Snyderverse fans. There's no point. But, the way Superman kills Zod in that movie, Man of Steel, is very violent. As I say, I'm fine with it. I love Man of Steel. It's a dramatic ending. It's shocking. And because Goya puts Superman in this no-win scenario, he has to do that, and I get it. So there were controversial moments, like Pa Kent, when young Clark's saying, what do you expect me to do, let them die? And he goes, maybe. But then Pa Kent elaborates on why he's saying that. My job is to protect you. And that's the point in that. And that's very, very Pa Kent. Not to allow a bunch of kids to die, but that keeping Clark secret is his priority. Just like it was in Smallville. So it wasn't the fact that Pa Kent wanted those kids to die on a bus, but he's scared. He's trying to protect his son. And that's the point. People tried to misunderstand all of this, especially MCU fans, purposely to shit on the movie. But there you have it, everyone. This is why the DCEU failed. Man of Steel still made under 700 million. BVS made nearly 900 million. David Ayer's tampered with Suicide Squad movie nearly made 800 million. Wonder Woman made over 800 million. Aquaman made $1 billion. It's clear that people liked, to a point, this epic vision. But it wasn't embraced totally, and BVS was very, very divisive. I don't think it should have been, but it was. It was divisive. Some people were really, really offended by that movie. But I think BVS is a wonderful analysis on Batman and Superman. It deconstructs to reconstruct. We have got so many beautiful memories. When I think, when people say to me, well, the DCEU has ended now, I say no. It ended twice. It ended in 2017 abruptly with Batman versus Superman, but then we got a huge celebration with the release of the Snyder Cut. What a great way to end with what Snyder did. Now, that's not the way I wanted it to end either. I wanted it to end with, Ben Affleck's Batman and Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 and and a Flashpoint movie that rounds off everything. Because don't forget, there were huger plans here. Zack had a director in mind for a Flashpoint movie. He had big ideas for Aquaman, which in the end weren't used, and they went a different direction. It kind of worked at times, and at times it didn't. So at the end of the day, I believe us, the fans, have lost something. And it remains to be seen if Gunn can make a better Superman movie than Man of Steel, if Gunn can make a more successful movie than Man of Steel. It's going to be very, very interesting what happens here. Because Snyder, as I say, has been treated like a pantomime villain. Vilified. But Zack Snyder kept his composure and decency throughout. And that says a lot about him. Because I tell you what, if I made these DC movies and you lot had attacked me like you've attacked him, not you lot, but whoever has, you would never see the end of my fucking fury. Imagine losing a daughter and having people saying horrible things about his parenting. I wouldn't let anyone get away with talking to me like that. But that's what makes Zack Snyder the better person. Ultimately, I celebrate Snyder's vision for the DCEU. I celebrate Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and even though Black Adam isn't the perfect movie, oh boy, do I fucking love that movie. James Gunn's Suicide Squad was great in places, but he bent the knee to entitled third wave feminist Margot Robbie, which leaves a bad taste in my mouth with that movie. And I love Peacemaker. That's what I love from the DCEU. But ultimately, for me, it's all about Snyder and his beautiful vision.